Hey, everybody. Hello again now with better weather out here in Los Angeles. The big storm has passed. But what is coming our way is a lot of really good TV early in the year.
We've been
You know,
eating well
very well.
between True Detective Night Country, which we have finished, and we now have a specific playlist for our non spoiler impressions on YouTube,
Yep.
as well as the first episode of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And the reason you haven't seen more filmed videos, impressions for us, the show's so good. There's so much to talk about. We're actually going to talk about the whole season as a podcast episode.
But
So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that.
also because it's the kind of show it merits an episode. Also because even if by the time you guys tune in, you've seen the whole season since it's one of those that Amazon just unloads at once. Um, there's a lot to mine from it. There's a lot to discuss. Like a good movie, like when we talk about good films that have already been playing for a while or that just opened. Um, there's just different. It's one of those shows with a very unique angle about millennial life and channeling that through the spy genre that we want to explore.
Yes, it uses the espionage angle to actually dissect relationships. There's a lot to talk about, so we still need to collect our thoughts. I think Elsie's still finishing up with a few more episodes,
Oh yeah,
so
yeah.
but that is coming your way. And
And
now Tokyo Vice. So
Tokyo
we
Vice.
are on episode 2 because HBO still does the weekly releases, which I like,
It's
especially
smart.
for a show like this, which does have a lot to digest, especially because of its perspective, right? We get to see boots on the ground journalism. We get to see another side of Tokyo, and episode 2 in particular, I think it really opens up a lot. We catch up with Jake, played by Ansel Elgort, Katagiri-san, the detective, played by Ken Watanabe, and we get to see more from Samantha and Saito. So let's get right into it.
Yeah, it's a very strong second episode. It's really great because what this show does so well is it builds on the last season as opposed to just recycling what happened. And so the characters grow and expand. Jake is no longer a green rookie at this Tokyo newspaper.
But
Um,
still has a lot to learn.
yes, exactly. Um, and he's also learned some hard lessons over the last season. So everyone is in a different place. He's been taken off the Yakuza beat, so now he's kind of taking stories that his editor throws at him. So we really get to see him bust his chops as a street reporter.
Well, remember at the beginning of the episode, his boss gives him that little test. I don't know if you noticed that. She gives him two stories to
Yes,
choose,
yes, yes,
one about motorcycles, which we will get into in just a moment, and one about the Yakuza. And I
yes,
like that little touch. And the way it's edited too, it gives him a beat because we know what she wants him to do. She knows that he really wants to take the Yakuza one and he wants to take it, but decides on the other one.
exactly. And well, and it's cool that he takes the other one because it really gives you a sense of the street reporter's job. He has to go investigate a group of motorcycle thieves who are presented as these real slick, uh, for lack of a better word, kind of cool
You know what?
outlaws.
I have a good analogy. It's basically the first Fast and Furious film,
It's like that
which
kind
is
of new
based
world, yeah.
on a New York Times article, I think called Racer X or something like that, about the street culture, street racing, and stealing, and all that other stuff.
No, right. Well, I mean, it's hard to remember now that Fast and the Furious started 20 something years ago as a gritty, uh,
Grounded.
grounded thriller. But it's nice to see that continuing in a show like Tokyo Vice, where the story angle with the motorcycle thieves is also used in a fun way to show the ethical challenges that a street reporter faces. At some points, Jake has to decide how far he's willing to go in partaking in these guys' activities
That's
just
such
to
a
get
good.
the story.
Well, no, that's an excellent point, and I actually wanted to kind of bring that up in this episode. If some of you don't know, Alcy, he's an entertainment journalist, but also spent many, many years as editor, but also beat writer for the Santa Monica College Corsair.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
so he has a bit of definitely some sensibilities about that. But from both of us, we really enjoy consuming content about journalists and the integrity of journalism. For example, I recently caught up with an excellent film called Another Day of Life
Oh, great movie.
about the legendary Richard Kapuscinski, probably one of the greatest war correspondents of the
Oh,
20th
top
century,
top top three, easy. Yeah, great
and
movie.
and it deals with the blurred line where how much does a journalist get involved with the events he's covering.
And how to capture it from a what's very challenging is how to capture it in a human way, right? With empathy. And as much as of a crime thriller as Tokyo Vice is, that's what makes it stronger too, because it's about how Jake deals with the fact that he meets people and characters both in the street stories he has to cover and in the wider Yakuza underworld that he's tempted to empathize with or become friends with, or he can't detach himself completely from what goes on when someone gets killed or when someone gets hurt or when
Oh, yeah, but also it's about very much about kind of finding your place and finding your footing
yes.
in the world of our choosing. What do I mean by that? Well, there's the world in the sense of where we reside and who our family is. But there's also the world that we create, as in the kind of job we pursue, the people that we associate with, and all
Yeah.
the characters that we see in this season, who continuing from last season, but we're starting to see a few more here and there. So Katagiri, Jake, Samantha, and Saito, who we catch up with in this episode, you get a sense that they're also trying to take control, right? Within these kind of corporate structures, which is strange to say about the Yakuza, but that's very much how we see it.
Yes, it's very again, the details are so nice too, because um it shows how all the characters in a way deal with these dilemmas, because Jake is dealing with that as a journalist, while Ken Watanabe's character as a cop is also dealing with his own ethical questions of how far he's willing to go just to fight these criminals, and whether he's willing to cross the line into vigilantism to do it. So where does the ethics of reporting, how far does that go? And then how far do the ethics of the lawman go as well? One to get the story, the other one to get the criminal. Yeah.
Exactly at what cost? Because in this episode, he meets, well, one of the brand new characters introduced into this season is part of the National Police Force,
Yes.
and they want to take the Yakuza down. And specifically, she basically wants them to kill each other in the streets. Whereas Katagiri-san, he's all about brokering peace and like letting them do their business in the shadows as long as there's no war in the streets.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Um, and then Jake gets into even hotter water, and I don't want to spoil
Yeah,
too
yeah, yeah.
much, but let's just say he gets into a a
Well,
romance
no,
or an
no,
affair.
I got a good way. Remember Jada Pinkett Smith?
Yes.
She got into an entanglement with
Yes.
one of her son's friends. Let's just say Jake gets into an entanglement, which is pretty soon going to bite him in the ass.
It's a pretty dangerous entanglement. It's one of those where you should be careful whose girl you play around with, basically.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
speaking of girls, mentioned Samantha and Saito. Samantha. So this episode takes place a few months after the first episode, and her club is now opened, and you sense she's trying to start a new chapter, but she also needs to balance. Well, she's figuring out that balance of what it means to own a club and trying to do right by people, but also knowing that your business partners are yakuza. So she's trying to get her way
Well,
without.
that's the thing. As independent as she wants to be, the problem with the world she operates in is that everyone at some point has to answer to these big bosses, and even she can't escape having to eventually pay a little something to one of the big yakuza
Well,
bosses,
Saito.
Saito.
So
Yeah,
let's talk about him.
who's also dealing with his own weird dilemmas.
He's great.
Yeah,
So I'm not gonna spoil too much about what happens to him going from season 1 into season 2. But the reason we didn't talk about him that much last episode is he was in a coma, and I'll leave it at that. But
exactly. Yeah.
in this one, he's trying to also climb the ranks of the Yakuza, but this new character, I think his name is Hayama, is brought in,
This hothead. He's
and
basically
yeah, he's a bit of a hothead who also wants blood to run in the streets. And while Saito is dealing with that, his brother needs money for college. And I really like that scene because in other shows, they would have that moment where, you know, Saito says, "No, absolutely not. Don't get involved." But the brother says, "Well, I don't just want your money. I want to work for it." So they set up a side hustle together.
And it's a nice way to raise that great, well, that theme of crime that's underexplored sometimes in all the flash and sensationalism of
Well, the
shows like this.
and movies like,
Yeah.
Goodfellas and
It-
stuff like that.
which is the 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 harsh truth about the working class element to crime and why it spreads. So even though Japan by this period in time is a big bustling economy,
Oh, and
uh,
this time, what do we mean? Because I don't think we've actually talked about when the show takes
oh,
place.
that's right. Actually, yeah, it's hard to remember, or it's easy to forget that this is technically a period piece. I know some. Sorry, millennials. Okay, yes, we are no longer that much. We're not spring chickens. And a show set in 1999
It's a period
is
piece,
a
guys.
period piece,
That
guys.
we're
Sorry,
sorry. Movie set in 2002. That's a
that's
period
a
piece.
period piece.
It's been
Yeah,
20 years. 20 years is not 1980 anymore. It's
exactly.
2002.
Exactly. This it's a period piece. So it's set in the Tokyo of 1999, and so at this time, Japan was still part of what was considered the big economic boom in Asia. What they called for a while in the 90s the Asian tigers. So the economy is booming, but you still have an underclass. You still have a working class that struggles to get by, and they start seeing crime as a perfect avenue for that, which also accounts for, I mean, the spread of aside from the fact that drugs are heavily consumed in the United States, there's a market for it. It also accounts for a lot of the rise of organized crime in Latin America and in other corners of the world, even in the United States. The presence of organized crime entities. So that angle of Saito's brother is really interesting because you empathize with him. You don't want him to start getting into big bro's business, but you get why, you get the appeal that if you want to pay for college and you don't have the money, here's an opportunity where you might be able to get that money in one swoop.
But also, what's really nice is in the show, people aren't, self righteous. Saito, yeah, he's a gangster who's kind of a nice guy, but like at the same time, he's not, he's not going to turn down an opportunity to also become proficient in the new web age and stuff like that. Jake, yeah, he wants to be a really important reporter, but he will also do dubious things to keep chasing the story. Um, and Samantha, I'm sure we're going to start seeing her pull some moves because, well, we start to see her do that. Saito, who we just mentioned, he tells her that she needs to rehire one of her hostesses, and
Yeah.
she says, "Hell no! Like the agreement we came to, I run the club the way I want." So that's part of her story, but I have no doubt we're going to see her get pushed into or pushed further into difficult situations. How does she straddle this somewhat freedom with answering to these guys?
It's that age old lesson in crime stories about how everyone ends up with a boss, especially if you're doing things under the table like this. Everyone owes somebody, because in Sam's case, the entrapment that kind of character finds herself in is, well, who do you even go to? Well, who's she gonna? There's no HR department.
Yeah,
You know, you just
she is the HR
she
department.
is the HR department. So, so it's an excellent series. Once again, filmed with just a great visual style. Michael Mann, as we mentioned in our last episode on the show, is still the executive producer. You see his style all over this
These
show.
directors, they have studied man more than man has studied himself
They outmanned
lately.
man with
I
this
mean,
show. Yeah.
it's sumptuous and rich, but it's not distracting, right? It's not trying to cover up a lack of material.
No, it's just,
It's that perfect pairing.
and it captures the slickness of a world where
It's true.
everyone is trying to look slick despite the muck that they're operating in. And what I mean by that is, Jake would love to be this slick reporter, but he gets himself into danger and may slip up.
Yeah, well,
The
he gets his ass handed to him like all the time.
the gangsters would love to think they're kings of the world, but
Well, until they get shot. Actually, well,
exactly.
not necessarily shot. Remember, Chihara, the cool OG, doesn't like guns, and let's just say that will be a recurring plot point in this episode. Well, not this episode, but the whole
The
series.
whole
Again, we're
season.
not trying to spoil everything.
But it's no, so it goes to the wonderful layeredness of the show. I mean, it is one of the best crime shows, procedurals. Well, not really a procedural, because this one's more about journalism. But it's one of the best. It's been one of the best crime shows to come out in many a moon. It's again, it's not a it's not anything too. It's not dumb. It does not treat the
No,
audience like
not
they're
at
dumb.
all.
Well, everybody, we are starting to lose sunlight here.
Exactly, the ticking clock. But we'll leave our usual links down below. We're going to keep up with this show, of course. I'm really excited to see where it's going. I believe it's 7 or 8 episodes. I think last season was 7 or 8 too. And lots of great TV. The Sympathizers coming out, I think, in a month or two.
No word yet from HBO when
Oh
that's
no?
coming out. Nope,
Okay.
nope, no. So we're highly anticipating that one. I may just catch up with some of his movies before then, Old Boy and Handmaid and all that good stuff. But that's coming out soon. Meanwhile, we're gonna keep you updated on other big new releases coming out, and these big TV shows as they also unspool. Make sure to leave us your comments, your likes, your love, your hate, your suggestions, your
All that good
all that
stuff.
good stuff.
And speaking of Michael Mann, episode 5, we are putting it together as we speak.
Chronicles
So
of Man, yeah.
until then, everybody, keep on watching movies, keep on thinking critically, and we'll catch you next time.
Keep on streaming, yeah. See you all soon.
Peace.